calling Design Review Committee for September 16th to order.
Are you on?
Oh, no, I'm not.
If you could repeat that.
There. Now I am. And you called the meeting to order. Let's begin with a roll call.
Esther Jacobson Bates,
Present?
Patrick Kavanaugh,
Here.
Joy Cully,
Here.
Brian Deputy,
Here.
Jennifer Dryden Hess. Here.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Deputy, would you lead the group in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Before we do anything more, I want to welcome to the DRC meeting the new city clerk, Anna Marie Porter. We're glad to have you here
Thank you.
and assisting the able city manager and also our planning consultant, Lori. So that's great. So we're glad to have you on board.
Thank you.
Not as much as Xenia's glad you're on board, but
Absolutely.
so we have approval of the agenda as distributed. Are there any questions or any issues with the agenda as presented? Okay, then I'll accept a motion to approve.
I so move.
A second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Thank you. Minutes of the meeting of August 19th. Appreciate the minutes being out, and are there any comments or issues with the minutes as presented? My only issue, I mean, it's a small one, but it relates, obviously, there was a discussion with Tracy Beard that's on there. And, it didn't really come, it was an odd deal because it was actually relating to a matter that came in as a complaint, sort of over the transom, but a complaint about the stickers. And I wondered, maybe this isn't the place for it, maybe I should have done it when, was there going to be though, I thought there might be a commitment or to have that taken to the city council?
Yes,
Or-
so the minutes reflect the comments that Tracy Beard from the chamber had made at the
Right.
meeting, which was not on the agenda. But yes, there's a commitment from me to take it to the city council per the city code, which just states that any sign on public property that is not installed by the city is subject to city council approval.
Okay, so that is required for that, and it's okay. I mean, again, I like the thing in many respects, but I think that is the nature of something that ought to be approved by the city council.
Correct,
And
and
I-
we can, I did make that a response, I believe, to the DRC at the
Okay.
time, and we can make that small amendment to the.
Yeah, that's, I want to make sure, it just seems like, she noted that there were code enforcement problems and miscommunication, but I think the resolution was basically to make sure that the city council took up the matter.
She did, I think, speak at that city council meeting, didn't she, about that same issue, only maybe less.
Well, yeah, so
detail.
we're discussing the minutes right now,
Yeah.
so let's
Okay.
note, we can make a note.
Yeah, you can
on this minute.
report more on it, the staff comments
So if you would
later in
like.
the meeting if you like. I mean, that's fine too. I just thought that was a little thin. 'Cause I thought we had kind of a resolution
We can make that amendment that I will take the matter to the city council in the
Okay.
minutes, and if you are okay with approving them with that amendment.
Okay. Are there any other comments, suggestions relating to the minutes?
No?
Hearing none. I'll accept the motion, yeah.
Motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
Okay, great. Thank
Second
you.
that.
And a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, yeah, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 5-0, thank you. Okay, now is the time for public comment on items not on the agenda. Is there anyone in the room that wants to make comments for items that are not on the agenda? Okay. Is there anyone in the Zoom world who has any comments to make that's not on the agenda? Okay. Then we will close that portion of the agenda and move on to the first item for disposition. That is a review of the subcommittee's work or status of a review of the subcommittee's status on working with the owner of the development at 539 Ellisell Road, the 11-unit condo. And we've been, doesn't require any introduction. We've been at it for a little while with it. And is there, who's going to, are you going to handle that, please?
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you.
So tonight you have before you a reconsideration of the timber color of this project. As you know, we've seen it several times. There is history with this project. The Planning Commission did approve it last year, and we're here today to address the combination of colors and the proposal by the applicant for a darker timber color in combination with the other colors of the project. We did appoint a subcommittee 2 meetings ago in regards to this to work with the applicant, and they've reviewed the colors, and they're here tonight to report their recommendation. And we also have a response or presentation on the lighting for this project.
Okay, great. And am I correct to say that the amended color scheme submitted for approval is the one that's shown on the color scheme number 4?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, who is here?
Subcommittee is Esther Jacobson Bates and Brian Deputy.
Say again?
The subcommittee is Esther Jacobson Bates
Oh,
and Brian Deputy, who have met and reviewed the colors, and they have their report.
Do you want to report on
Sure.
the results of that, please?
So we met and discussed the color palette. The recommendation is to approve the Bear Creek, which is the color for the half timbers. This building is going to be very prominent when it's completed, and as we understand from looking at the diagram of the building, that the portion that's depicted in yellow will be the primary visible portion, because the long side of that will face basically the parking lot behind Denmarket Square, where
Mhm.
the parking for Chomp and Inklings, and be very visible. The thought is that since this will not hold up any project development and progress, by looking a little bit more deeply at the colors, we would like to recommend that staff is given the final authority to work with the applicant to find a bit more subdued palette. And that's in relationship to the surrounding buildings. The building on the right, and that's shown in this picture, is the People Helping People building, which is very plain and very white. The building on the left, which is Denmarket Square, is again relatively light color. So this is a very visible color palette. So the recommendation would be to just find a kind of toned down variation of the yellow and the blue. And Brian and I would be willing to continue to support staff and give staff the authority, and we can consult with them on finding the final color, which will mean the applicant will not have to come back here, but I think there can be a kind of compromise. And also understanding that this applicant has really worked with the city for an extended period to arrive at their palette. But that said, it's also a very, very visible building in the town, and it needs to conform to the rules that we have to apply, which is how it fits with the surrounding buildings, as well as how it looks as a standalone. And it is that surrounding area that has us concerned about the depth of the tones of the yellow and the blue.
Okay.
Brian, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just that we are, obviously sympathetic and thankful that the developers are willing to listen and willing to have us help them. And that being said, we will commit to working as quickly as we need to help this move along. So.
But you would like us tonight to ratify your recommendation with these three colors? Is that, or what's the nature?
No, to ratify the Bear Creek and give staff the authority with our
Okay.
subcommittee to support them in finding the colors,
The background colors or base
the
colors?
body
for the-
colors that are now
in-
shown
okay.
in the denim wash and lemongrass.
But you want ratification in support of the committee or action by the committee regarding the timbering color?
Yes, and I think as a whole, if that's,
Yes,
I'm
Mr.
looking
Chair,
at-
if we could, so basically, the ask from the subcommittee is that the entire committee would take a vote to say that staff will work with the applicant to find more subdued colors for the yellow portion and the blue portion. And you would, as a committee, pass on that authority to staff, and it won't come back to you for ratification, but we'll continue to work and consult with the subcommittee since they're so familiar with the colors.
But we can't approve the timbering color
Correct.
tonight? Okay. Is that,
that's the motion.
okay, that's the
I
motion.
have a question, I guess, a follow-up question. Just also understanding the personalities and also the frustrations. I wonder if, just in your comments, would you or would we as a body consider either Swiss coffee that was previously suggested, or bleaker beige, or antique pewter, because they're all neutrals. And so I just wonder if that might be another way to approach it, to say it could be a modification of the yellow and the blue, or it could be one of those neutrals. Because I frankly think that he might have a pretty strong reaction to modifying the blue and yellow again, given his prior comments about this, everybody being excited about the blue, and him being pretty frustrated that he's submitted all of these so far. So I just wonder if any of those colors might be just another path to approval, that might be more expeditious as an option. So it's just something I'm.
So rather than just narrow it to these two, really
Just-
opening it up to
Just to say
others.
that, yeah, if
Yeah.
the concern, which I hear, I absolutely agree with what they're saying, but I was sort of the mind that I wanted to sort of get him through this today.
Mhm.
I'm just wondering if there's another way to do it also, and give him more of a choice, like, you could continue with the blue and yellow and maybe modify it, or go with the neutral that you've already submitted, which
Mhm.
I know Swiss coffee, we all know Swiss coffee.
Yeah.
And I believe that bleaker beige and antique pewter are also in the neutral family, and they would not be, a concern likely as a field color.
So then the motion then would be the modification of the blue and yellow, or go back to your neutrals, the bleaker and
Bleaker beige and the Swiss coffee.
or approve that, like,
With the, for field.
So-
For field, they could, yeah.
In looking at this, then, what my suggestion would be, and I think that that's a really excellent idea, because we can approve something that's like good to go, or we can give them
Right.
part of that, and we have to continue the dialogue. I would like to see that the building that is depicted now in the yellow, which is the most visible building, I would propose the bleaker beige for that, so it'd be a kind of a contrast to the existing Denmarket Square. The Swiss coffee for what is currently shown in the blue tones, and then go with the sample that he submitted of the Bear Creek for the trim.
Right. Would we also be open, I think I would be open as well as for the black bean soup as a trim color as well.
Say that again, I'm sorry. didn't
No,
hear.
that's okay. I was saying that I think I would also be open to the black bean soup color for the trim, if, maybe not for the lighter color, but then again, it's pretty good on the
I
coffee
actually
on the other
would
side.
too, so I think that might be a little close
To that.
yeah.
I do think that we all sort of said, because this one never got presented to us, right? That was something that got ruled out before it came here, and we were all kind of like, well, how come that got ruled out? You
Yeah.
know, so
Right.
I think we all have a
Yeah.
little bit of an affinity for that.
And I actually mentioned that, I said, well, in going back, because we did have these older ones to look at. I
Sure.
said, well, they, you know, some of these are pretty good, and I met this one.
Sure,
He
yeah.
wasn't that happy
Yeah.
with that suggestion, as I
Yeah.
recall, so we can offer it to him.
Yeah, I think it was more costly.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
if you're gonna have a brick facade, I think that's probably.
Well,
a little-
and-
We're saying they wouldn't need the brick.
Right.
Right, just going
Right.
with the paint,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's
So then you were, Joy, you were saying utilize the black bean soup for the beams as opposed to the Bear Creek?
Not necessarily as opposed to, but
Okay.
I guess if they wanted, in my mind, if they wanted.
You look at two different colors
Two
of the
different colors
timber.
or something, yeah, that. the
So
black
one
beans
could be
nice.
the
Oh, I see, so that the one building, that was the Swiss Coffee would have the Bear Creek beams, and the other building that was the Bleaker Beige would have the black bean soup beams?
Yeah,
So
I mean, kind of similar to what they have here, right? They've got the antique pewter as a building color, and then the black bean soup as a timber, and then on the front building, it's the bleaker beige as a timber, but, yeah, I mean, I don't know necessarily what configuration, but I think the question is, are we open to letting them use this whole palette, maybe with the exception of the red, or do we let them use, you know what I'm saying, like, in other words,
Well, and this ends up making it appear as two separate buildings rather than being a whole,
Right.
which,
as it should.
as that seems to be the architect's target the entire time there, so.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's also more consistent with the Danish tradition that we're bound to.
and it works very nicely in other locations.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with two different colored timberings then,
Mm-mm.
but they have to be in the brown family.
Yeah, well, they're
Whether-
both in contrast.
And I think that, I feel comfortable letting him make that choice, obviously. I think that's a great comment you made.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, nice.
And,
Okay, here are.
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Here is Swiss Coffee, Bleaker Beige, Bear Creek,
Mhm.
and the Black Bean.
Nice,
So it would be something where
Some,
the
they
lighter
made two choices here.
building
yeah.
would have the lighter half timbers, and the darker body would have the darker half timber. So this combination with the, which one, this one would be the one that's closest to, this one would be where the yellow currently is. Am I understanding
That's-
that?
sure,
And this
if you
would be where the blue
Sure, if you want.
currently
I
is.
think that's the bleaker ridge,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then,
Okay,
Okay,
I guess, oh, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, well, in our motion then, could we say, we will approve this
Yeah.
right now if you do
Right.
this?
right.
Or we
Or-
will do the other motions.
Yeah.
Or
For the yellow.
modify the yellow and the blue.
yeah.
I love it.
And just for the sake of future conversations, because one of the things we talk about a lot is the importance of having some color and bold color. And so, given that, as you're saying, like, with the surrounding buildings being more tame, this is maybe just that garish or bright or something, that's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah.
Would we be having that same conversation about a building with other colorful buildings around it? I mean, are we, I'm asking just like for the group, are we setting a precedent that now we're not going to encourage brighter colors? Or, because one of the other statements is having things look different from each other, right? So which
Right.
this definitely accomplishes. I'm not necessarily giving an opinion, I'm just.
It
part of the
does,
conversation.
I think that, again, I think a comment we made a while ago was where the placement of the building is, and this building abuts the residential
Yeah.
neighborhood right behind it. And so actually, that was one of the things that was sort of keeping me up at night about it, was thinking about how if you were looking out of your window down the street and you looked at this building all the time, would it bother you to do so?
Yeah.
Versus being right in the center, surrounded by other commercial buildings.
Well, this is technically DR20, right?
It is, but it's
Which
still,
isn't the TRC, and the TRC is
Yeah.
kind of a different story, so.
but it still backs up to, most of those
Well,
apartments.
Yeah, I mean, DR20 is a residential
Right,
zone,
yeah.
so maybe my point is moot, because really, we're talking about TRC and the bright colors, and so forget what I said.
Well, and I think that he, thinking back when he made his presentation, he showed the picture of the area in Copenhagen, and colors of the buildings were very vibrant, all of them were. But this being very, very bright all by itself is what was the concern. So, do you want me to, I don't know if this is called building one that's yellow, or how to identify it, but the one that's yellow in the plans here.
Chair, if I may, this is Chelsea O'Sullivan, the Assistant City Attorney. If I may interject briefly, I just wanted to note that the DRC is going to need to, you gotta be careful about not giving too broad of instructions for staff to consider. Certainly it would be appropriate for you all to instruct and approve a palette that the applicant could then select from, but the DRC is gonna have to be the body selecting the colors. And, I think if you're gonna select the blue or the yellow and give the applicant a range around that they can go in, that would be appropriate, but other than that, you need to be a little specific on what you're approving.
So, Assistant City Attorney, I believe the committee right now is discussing two very specific options for what used to be the yellow and what used to be the blue. So there's a specific 4 colors with 2 colors for each. And Member Bates was just identifying which color would apply to which portion of the building. So it's very specific at this point.
Thank you.
And if I understand what you're saying is, attorney, that we shouldn't say staff has the authority to make the decision and work with the committee. So that kind of makes us revise what's going on. So then tonight, we can approve this palette, and if the applicant is not happy, then they can come back and they will have hopefully listened to what our conversation was in regards to the other colors. Does that seem appropriate?
Right, and you can approve multiple colors. It's not that you have to approve only one option tonight. But yes, that's correct. Just generally saying staff can make the decision is what we want to avoid. So that is in your purview as the DRC.
Okay.
Does it make sense to have the 2 options be the palette we have here approved, or subcommittee revisits it outside of the meeting once again?
I'd like to.
And brings it
I'd really-
back to the committee.
I'd like to have some certainty, and we kicked it around, quite a while, and we've come to a position where we're close. I don't know, maybe it's not possible to.
I think that we need to tell them, this is approved tonight, listen to the comments that we've made about the others, and then because we can't submit a palette, tonight that gives them, Plan A, versus Plan B. According to the attorney, we approved this and then otherwise he has to come back.
It seems to me we could approve, we have two colors,
Mhm.
this color and the other color
Mm-hmm,
for timbering,
mm-hmm.
right? And so, and we ought to approve these. Is that right, regardless of?
No, I think it's,
Esther was gonna make the recommended combination as
So-
part of her
Oh, I
motion.
see.
see,
Okay.
because it would depend upon the body color as to what the timber color is.
Okay,
So that's why it's kind of,
okay.
And if they ultimately opt for a toned down version of the yellow and the blue, then we're probably back to Bear Creek
right,
generally,
right.
I mean, on its own.
So Esther, if you could go ahead and list your color combination, because both the applicant and the architect are online.
Okay,
And so if you could list your recommended combination,
sure.
then they can respond to it.
Sure, okay. I'm recommending, well, per our
We are.
conversation, that the building depicted in yellow, we were recommending for the body, the bleaker beige, Benjamin Moore HC 80, with the timbers in black bean soup, Benjamin Moore 2130-10. For the building that is shown in blue in the diagram, the body of the building, OC 45 Swiss Coffee, Benjamin Moore, with the trim Bear Creek 1470, Benjamin Moore. That's my motion.
And I'm second.
Okay, you have a motion, second, I have a comment. The yellow and blue are
Not being
not
discussed
been
at this time.
discussed, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Any other comments? We have motion?
Public
So
comment.
what about public comment?
Yes.
We
Yeah.
were gonna call that.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Public comment.
All right, yeah, let's have public comment, and then we'll have any final comment from members of the committee. Who's calling?
The applicant is
this
Eric
is it.
Vasquez.
Okay,
This is the applicant, Eric Vasquez.
okay, good, welcome.
Thank you. So, are you ready for my comments? or-
Yes, please.
Well, first off, thank you all for, attempting to give me some leeway here. But I do object to the process, and it's very similar to my comments from before, is I feel that this DRC is overriding the planning commission's approval and starting to inject themselves in things that were already approved. And I don't feel that process is appropriate, and I would like the city attorney to chime in on that. Because the planning commission said this project should go back to the DRC for lighting and landscaping only, nothing else. So I do object in that regard, and it does seem, and I'm still not quite sure what the motion is, but it seems that as if I'm almost getting additional conditions put on my project that I need to come back, get additional approvals either from staff or the DRC. And again, I'm not sure the DRC can do that. You can make recommendations to the planning commission, but the conditions on the project have to come from the planning commission, not this commission. So although I appreciate the flexibility you're trying to give to me, and again, this is not the project I wanted. This is the third project. This is my plan 3. I want to know what I've got. I don't want to have to come back to another committee or another commission moving forward, because if I do have to do that, I'll just go back to the planning commission and get what I want. So I do object to this process. I don't think it's appropriate, and I would like the city attorney to chime in on that. Thank you.
Okay. Chelsea, do you have comments regarding that?
First, I guess does the committee want the applicant to comment on any of the colors that were just discussed? And if not, I can, if the committee would like me to answer his question, I can also address that.
Well, applicant Have you given any, do you have any comments regarding those colors that were discussed?
Unfortunately, I'm driving, so I
Okay.
can't see them.
Okay,
I'm guessing I would like them, but I don't know what they are. And again, I like the flexibility here, but I need to know what I got at
right.
this point.
If I may interject, this is Jerry Sano, I'm the architect, so Eric, all the colors that we did send in were all combinations of different colors that we had submitted prior to, so if I may, kind of like the rough background of this was we had originally just submitted a color palette that was fairly simple, Swiss coffee and a black bean soup, with the idea of keeping it in compliance with the original design requirements, the light colors of the building, and then contrasting timbers. And then we were given the direction prior to approvals. We were given the direction that we want to basically distinguish two different parts of the building, so that it looked like two different buildings. So we did that with the color scheme number 2, where you see the bleaker beige and the antique pewter being introduced. Later on, multiple different renditions afterwards, we were given a completely different direction to go towards that Copenhagen neon look, which was super bright and super colorful. And our personal taste aside, we do honestly prefer the first couple of renditions, but we were approved with the brighter colors that Eric and I had put together, and Eric went through multiple times with staff and the planning commission to get that particular thing approved. So I agree. I agree with Eric. The process at this point is honestly a little bit patience training, just because it seems like we're reverting back to something that was, well, honestly, the original intent was to keep it more muted, which I think we can all agree that that's where we all want to go. When it comes to just talking about the colors, Eric, if you don't mind me speaking for both of us on our behalf, I think the colors are of bleaker beige and black bean soup, and then the Swiss coffee and the Bear Creek are preferable. However, it is a little bit upsetting that we're coming round circle again.
Yeah.
So at the point where we're at right now, just to kind of give everybody a full scope, we've already went through all of our reviews for plan reviews for the building department, fire, and public works. Everything's pretty much ready to be permitted. We're just waiting on this one last element, and so in the effort of moving things along, we really would like to have some sort of agreement figured out this evening.
Right, I appreciate that too, and I think, our patience is also, tested because we want to fulfill the responsibilities we have under the city code, and that includes a responsibility to pass on certain aspects of it, including the colors and the design related to the Danish modern. Now, there was, though, a gap, I suppose, in the effectiveness or the activity of our predecessor organization that had that responsibility, perhaps when the Planning Commission approved the project, the plans that they saw. Perhaps the City Council can say whether and to what extent the Planning Commission has authority to approve colors. But this was a matter brought to us by the staff after review by the Planning Commission, because so we could act on it. And I think there is a commitment by this group to basically fulfill the responsibilities that's laid out in the city ordinance, and one of those had the real stopper, I guess, on the proposal that was supposedly approved by planning, was the white timbering. And the design standards of that was clearly at variance from the explicit requirements in the design standards that were adopted over 30 years ago. So we're just trying to do our job at this end, and I know you're trying to do your job too. Part of our job, I think, is though to resolve it. I think rather than kind of in an endless do loop of consideration. But we want to do the right thing, and we appreciate very much your efforts to help us do that. Xenia, do you have something to add?
I do. I think the question that the applicant is having is whether if this alternate combination of colors that didn't go to the planning commission is approved here at DRC today, which we understand now is preferred by them, whether that triggers having to go back to the planning commission. That's what I'm hearing. I'm hoping our city attorney can clarify that point.
Yeah, because it was my understanding that the DRC has the final say on the color, and as a, one of the committee members here, I also would like to have that clarified. So.
Yeah, and if it doesn't, it should. I mean, because we don't want to have, let's say, form shopping and saying, well, we're going to go to one of the committees that, in another committee. But perhaps the council can help on that, to clarify the reviewability of the color scheme by the planning commission under these circumstances, where it approved the building, but there's certain aspects of the building's proposal that seems to me, at least, and I may be wrong, and we'll be happy to acknowledge that, if there's certain aspects of the building that are exclusive jurisdiction, let's say, of this committee rather than the planning commission.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to look at what the planning commission had previously decided, because this project is in a bit of a different situation because there was that gap in the predecessor to the DRC. In this instance, because the planning commission already made its determination on the project,
right,
and as a condition of that approval, sent it back to the DRC for review. In this instance, I think that the DRC would have the final say on the colors. So whatever is decided tonight,
okay,
it wouldn't have to then go back to planning commission.
right.
And I think that that's what we're really trying to assist in having happen. And the fact that I just heard that there's a preference for the color palette that this group, it seems, prefers, it sounds like we all have a solution that could be arrived at tonight and be done and everybody be happy about it.
Is
The
the
decision, not necessarily the process.
Yeah, it does that though, I mean, I understand this has gone on too long for you and too long for us, but does that characterization of the colors palette that was described earlier meet the architect's, or match the architect's understanding? Or does that reflect your understanding of the, what's your name?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is Jerry Sandolling, I'm the
Yes.
architect. Yes. I would agree with you. I think the colors that you had mentioned before, they would fit our preference.
Okay.
Again, it's on our side, we're more worried about the process than anything.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think we are where we are, and we ought to resolve this. And I think maybe we're in a position to do that now without any more subcommittee action, so we can deliver to you and your client a palette of colors that are okay with us and okay with you. Okay, does that sound fair? So, do you have a?
There's a motion on the floor. I
Okay.
made
Would
the
you like to
motion.
open to public comment? Any
Okay,
other
any
public
more
comment?
public comment? Public comment in the room? Public comment on the Zoom space? Okay, any other comments on the part of committee members?
Well, before we make a motion, I think we're also talking about the lighting, aren't we?
You can make two
Yeah, I think we
motions.
can do the
We'll
paint
do,
first.
yeah, we'll do the colors separate, that's a good point, though we do want lighting to cover, there's a good chunk on that. So the motion before us is to accept the palette of the 4 colors that Member Bates described earlier in her motion. Okay? Understood?
Yeah, was there a
Is there
second?
a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, there is a second, there it is.
Roll call?
Yeah, let's have a roll call then.
We can do it informal. Everybody in favor say aye.
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 Okay, 5-0. Thank you very much.
I think it's gonna be a beautiful building. I'm speaking for our committee here in the process being very difficult. And in the end, the building fits the codes, fits the location, and it's going to be a really positive addition.
Yeah, and from a procedural point of view, this is really one of the very last projects that were in kind of the backup, or backlogged, at the time that our committee became effective. And so there were a handful of projects that were sort of in the same limbo state, and I think that going forward, it'll be better for applicants.
We hope that nobody has to go through as many steps in design as
Yeah.
you've had to go through.
Yeah, it's important to have that continuity, and I think that's something cities learned.
So the
Okay.
next item on the, for this project, was request by your committee to have a report on the final plans that have been submitted and the lighting plan to make sure that it was compliant with the dark sky standards,
But, so this relates only though to the lighting, right?
to the outdoor lighting.
Okay,
Yes.
fine.
And so the package that was presented to you was probably more than you wanted to see about lighting. But that is the materials that are provided by the architect in the final construction plans. And the architect, Jerry Sandoval, is here to answer any questions. I did meet with Nancy Emerson to go over the construction plans, and she is also here tonight to
Yeah.
respond to her review. And I'm not sure if I need to go through any of the individual lighting standards. There were 2 of them that Nancy had some questions about, so she has talked with the architect, and hopefully between the 2 of them, they can respond to some of the questions that came up today.
Okay. Is the architect ready to address these issues for the lighting?
Yeah. Yes, actually, I did already reach out with Nancy and we via email, and I did send her requested images and links and pointed out a couple of areas where she could find her answers to. So I think, based on our last email, I think we might have resolved everything, but as always, I'm here to provide any other responses if needed.
Okay, great.
One of my main concerns was the illumination coloring. I think that's the right way of saying it, that it be the warm rather than the cool. And I believe that Nancy's done her usual wonderful deep dive as the We Watch and consultant or member, and our kind of wonderfully knowledgeable lighting person. So I defer to what
Okay, yeah, we'll ask
Nancy
Nancy.
has to say
I
on
see
this.
Nancy is on there. Any other comments then at this point?
Yeah.
Okay.
The pictures look nice.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought from a design perspective, the pictures look nice.
Mhm.
I agree, yep.
Nancy, I see you, and I look forward to hearing your evaluation of the lighting plan as proposed and perhaps even somewhat amended by the architect in response to your concerns.
Thank you very much. It's been interesting to delve even further into the lighting, and Jerry Sandoval has been very helpful with my questions. she may want to just speak briefly to you and show you the Vega fixture and the walk lighting fixture and how they will be used on the buildings. Because those were the two that you hadn't seen.
All right. Carrie, do you have those, and can you draw our attention? I don't want to go through, I mean, as efficiently as possible. Can we go through those then? And then we'll give Nancy an opportunity to share her overall opinion after that.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you want me to share my screen. I did also send and CC Lori, so she should have the email with those links as well. So I don't know if it's easier for you guys to share your screen or you'd like for me to do that. Basically, I just sent the manufacturer website for the Vega downlight fixture and also the WAC wall sconce fixture.
If you could share your screen, that would be great.
Okay, give me 1 second here. Always acts a lot slower when you're under pressure, huh? Okay. All right, the first one, I'm sharing my screen right now. Let me know if you can see it.
Yes.
All right, this would be the Vega downlight fixture. As you can see from this website, it's surface mounted, and you do see a little bit of light, the light ring around it. These are the manufacturer renderings for what this would look like. Right? And the other lighting fixture is this case outdoor wall sconce, and it's got a frosted lens, as you can see, and these are just the different colors that would come in it, but this particular sconce with the 3000 Kelvin is the one that we have specified.
Okay.
Right, so I can stop my share so you guys can go on here. Basically, these two light fixtures, they can be found on the electrical sheets, E4.10, 420, and 430. These are all located within the private entry alcoves, and so they're not like the Evergreen Series wall fixture that you see on the renderings that you saw in the color renderings. These ones are really tucked away within the actual entry, so you don't really see them. That was my explanation to Nancy, and I highlighted a couple of areas just to show where they were. So yeah, that's pretty much the explanation for
okay. Anything more? I mean, should we?
Nancy had.
Let's have Nancy. Would you give us your view regarding that?
It seems to me that you're very close to agreement. And the one thing that we want to achieve, I think, jointly, is getting as close to 3000 Kelvin as possible. I don't think it will be possible for the isolite sconce, which is an emergency light. And I think that we hopefully won't see a lot of power outages, and just getting light in there in that kind of emergency is really important. So I think we accept the 5,000 there. That would be my recommendation. The evergreen fixture, I believe, can be found in 3,000 Kelvin. It's an architecturally beautiful accent for the building, and I think the warm light will be really important there. The Lithonia parking lot fixtures seem to be fine. The overall height of the fence in the back, I think, will protect the neighbors, and the neighbors aren't even close to the the first fixture, which is out toward the street. The Quinault Millennium Stretch fixtures, they have a curved lens, but I think they're clear in the back of the parking spaces under the building, and they won't be a problem because there's a beam between them and the parking lot.
Okay,
And as she said, the Vega and the walk lighting is really either inside the condos or right at their doorstep, and that's very protected. And so if we can be assured that 3,000 will be used everywhere possible and as low as possible on all the other fixtures.
okay,
I feel confident that the lighting will work out well on this site.
okay.
Really appreciate the architect's willingness to look at warmer light here.
Thank you. And I know she appreciates that comment, and I appreciate, Nancy, your review of this, your careful review of this. It means a lot, I think, to the committee to have that expertise here and along with others. And I appreciate Ms. Sandal's expertise and work with the dark sky representatives and experts to address some of the issues here. And I heard a good praise of your efforts, Ms. Sandal, to address some of these issues. So we appreciate that very, very much. Anything else? Any other comments? Any other comments regarding this in the room? On the,
Any members of the public?
I'm sorry?
Did you ask for any?
Oh, that's what I meant. Anyone in the room, any member from the public here in the room or in the Zoom space? Okay, then,
Well, I'd like to make a motion
okay,
that the lighting as presented be approved with the attention and request that the kelvins or the illumination be at 3,000 or less as everywhere possible. And thank you for addressing the issues, Nancy.
okay,
Second that.
okay. Any comment? Any more comments on it? Let's take this to a vote then. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
5-0. And thank you all for your efforts on this. This is going to be a terrific project, and it'll be a terrific addition to the community's downtown district. Good. Get that checked off. The next item. Oh, I'm sorry?
No, I was gonna just present the next one.
Okay, the next item is the project review of the proposal at 519, pardon me, at 459 Atterdag Road, the bocce courts.
Yes, this is a request for a conditional use permit for outdoor entertainment, including bocce ball courts and seating areas. The applicant is also including an outdoor wine tasting bar area, and I'd just like to go through the slides on this particular site.
Okay,
The application was submitted mid-August. We're in the review process now, and all of the departments are reviewing it. We did send this to the health department, fire department. We're working with ABC. We just want to make sure that we're addressing all of the items before this moves on to the planning commission, and of course with your committee's comments. So this particular site is located at the elbow of Atterdag. There is an alleyway on the west side, parking to the south. You have the Silk Road, which you've all been involved with that particular project, as well as the color palette that was approved for the rest of the Outer Dag buildings. And all of those improvements have gone in and I think have come out very well with your assistance. The Outer Dag vacant lot was approved and with a development plan for an expansion of the Outer Dag Hotel. That happened about 2.5 years ago. The permit is still good. However, with COVID and this financial situation, that particular hotel expansion will probably not happen for a while. And so this proposal is coming forth to use that piece of property. Next slide. This is again another vantage point of what's happening in the courtyard area and where that particular site is located. It isn't important to note where the property line is in the white and how it relates to the rest of the features in that courtyard area. Next. This is another shot of how it exists right now. It's basically an undeveloped piece of property. Next slide. So the proposal is to fence off the area along the property lines, establish some outdoor seating areas and 3 bocce ball courts. That will be outdoor entertainment, nice seating area, expansion of the courtyard. The feature that is of concern is the wine bar that's located in the upper left-hand corner, and we'll go through the rest of the slides. This is a concept vision of those seating areas. Again, they have the open gate to Clean Slate. This is the Clean Slate's proposal, so it's an expansion of their outdoor area that they currently have, which is, you know, patio area, and then they can buy their wine there and walk across, or they can buy their wine at the open bar. You can see where the bocce ball courts are and also how the Silk Road building relates to this site. Next slide. This is another vantage point. You got that flat wall of the Outer Dag Hotel, firewall along the property line, and then you also can see the open bar area at the far corner. They would be adding planters and other features to spruce up the area. Next slide. This is the open bar area. It's basically a C-train building that would be opened up and have the ability to serve when the facility's open. Go ahead. Oh, that's the last slide. So we're here tonight to talk about what is being proposed and what recommendations you would have before this goes to the Planning Commission. This is really the first one that we have that you've actually looked at before it goes to the Planning Commission with your recommendations. And then they'll take their action and then we'll come back for the final review. So I look forward to hearing what you have to say about this proposal.
Comments?
I love the idea of the bocce courts. I've always felt that Solvang needs more experiences, so I think that's cool. The obvious elephant in the room is the container bar, which I also happen to like the look of, but of course the question we're going to be charged with is, does it fit in with the Northern European architecture of the many years ago, which I think is pretty clear it doesn't. My thinking is it is towards the back of the lot. It also backs up to an alley. So I think the question I'm asking all of us is, how important is that, given its location? So, I haven't decided yet, personally.
It is the colors of the Danish flag.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, right.
colors of the Danish
Yeah,
flag.
exactly. You can't say it's not Danish.
Yeah.
I have a question. I'd like to come back to that, but I was wondering if you could take it back up to the footprint of the building, the one that had the kind of white
The white
car
car.
in it. This one, could we put that slide back up for a minute?
Here you go.
Okay, so the reason I asked to look at that is looking at how the fencing will work as I'm kind of trying to get this in my head, because walking over there, I looked at how delivery trucks come in and how people park, and often that little area that is in front of the white car in this image is used for parking there. So would there still be the curbside parking spaces like where this white car is? And would that fence then close off that existing parking space? I'm not even sure how official that parking space is, but I'm assuming that that's where the fence line would be. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's what they're proposing.
Because that seems, the only thing that concerns me about that is it's so close to the street, but is that along the building line? I mean, is it in line with the wall of the building there?
Correct.
Okay. Like I said, just kind of
You
trying
can
to.
see that on,
Yeah,
Here.
on the other one, trying to get a handle on where that would sit and how it would look.
I thought it was actually interesting that that was part of that lot. I mean, I've walked
Yeah,
through
I
it many
agree.
times. I like the use of that. I've always felt like that space is kind of unused space or kind of a waste of space, especially given all the restaurants there, that there's never actually like tables there or, you know, anything that's being used. And I've seen them do a lot of different things with the landscaping and stuff to try to, you know, make it fit in. But I was surprised actually to find that that wasn't part of the other complex. And it's not, right? It is actually part of that.
Part of the
They're not,
other
so in other words, Clean Slate isn't, they're not taking, not that it matters really, but they're not necessarily saying, okay, we're gonna take part of our real estate in the front and combine it with this other property. It is all one property.
well, Clean Slate isn't the proposer, right?
Well, okay, so the owners of Clean Slate
They're not the owner,
are the applicant
They're
for
the
the
applicant.
Outer Dag.
but they don't own the
Outdoor.
land. That's
They
still
don't
owned by
own
the,
it either.
by the Outer Dag Inn.
Right, correct.
Okay, so to understand, and to back up, Bocce Ball Courts seem like they'd be a great addition to town. People come looking for things to do, and it's a land, you know, a property that's locked in there and not developed. It's a bit of an eyesore, and it would seem to be a really fun aspect to have a bocce ball court there. And my concerns lie in the style of the wine bar, and I'm not as opposed to it not being Danish, but also not looking, like being able to be secured because it's a wine bar. Also lighting and landscaping, which looks like they've got some pots planned, but I think that it'll be important to have that clearly defined to be able to soften the area, the building by it. And parking, if I understand, is in the limited lot that exists behind the Silk Road, and then of course the big public lot
Right.
that's adjacent to it.
So it's very important that you understand that the parking lot for Silk Road is not a public parking lot.
Correct.
It's Silk Road and the Outer Dag tenants.
And that's
So-
that entire courtyard where the bocce ball court is
Correct.
proposed, yes.
So the actual people that would not go to Clean Slate or not go to Silk Road, if they wanted to go into the wine bar, they would have to park in the public space. They're not parking at Silk Road's parking lot.
Even though Clean Slate is making this an extension of their
Right.
business.
Oh, okay, I had understood, I'm glad you pointed that out, because I thought that that parking lot was for the entire complex there, and you're saying, no, it's only for the building where Silk Road is?
Yes.
Okay,
And those two cottages, the two
Okay.
cottages there.
so Clean Slate doesn't have any parking, nor
Not
would,
that I'm aware of.
and nor would the new bocce ball / wine tasting, if that's what they got, would
And
they?
that's one of the elements that we're working out to clarify for the planning commission, is exactly how we're going to logistically work through the parking issues.
Because that was, you know, kind of top of the list for me, was the parking on that.
Right.
And there's not really a solution to be found unless, I guess it could be accessed at the back.
Yeah, they could have, yeah, I think
Instead of a
there was
wine
some
bar.
additional parking on the proposal for the expansion of the Outer Dag Inn.
The Outer Inn was actually going to have parking underneath the building.
That's right, but I mean, that was part of the plan, so that's on
For,
that
for
site.
the Outer Inn, but not for this site.
Yeah, that's the question I had, because I was on bar when that
Right.
was approved. And then I understand stuff happens and they delay it, but you know, I'm intrigued with the use. I think it's a creative, you know, use to provide. It's kind of a temporary, you'd almost have to view it as a temporary facility, wouldn't you?
And that's basically the proposal from, you know, working with Clean Slate and the owners of the Outer Dyke Inn. They're seeing this as a beneficial use in the interim.
Right, and that also probably explains why it's not a, you know,
Fully constructed building.
fully constructed building, yeah, with, you know, with masonry and all of anything else, it seems like, right?
Correct.
But it is kind of a temporary building and kind of a holding use that's going to create some profitability. I guess for the owners of Outer Inn through the rents that it extends or it charges Clean Slate, I assume, something like that.
Correct.
Okay.
I have some thoughts and comments
Please.
Before we move on, but
Yeah, me too.
okay. I'm sure we'll be succinct, Brian, but we'll see. So I get that it's temporary, but I think that the choice of materials will be really important. So I would say that, you know, I don't think it should be like AstroTurf over, you know, a concrete, or like a, you know, base concrete layer, something like, I don't think that that's a great look. So I don't know, but I would think materiality in terms of a good quality material in the seating area would be important. The bocce courts I think decomposed, whatever.
Granite.
Yeah, right. And they, you know, that's pretty standard, but I would think that the seating area, you'd want it to look more permanent, even if it's not. It's not. And then I think secondly, what Esther was saying relative to the lighting, that the lighting needs to be ample and sufficient and of good quality as well. And same with the furniture, should be also of good quality and consistent. And then back to our umbrellas conversation from many moons ago, that for sunshade, that those would also be consistent. So I think some of the things that we've already built on could be used here, even the fencing, you know, something that looks more than just temporary would be better. And as long as it's good, well-built and of good quality, you know, I would be supportive. The only other thing is the fencing. I think in real life, the fence between Silk Road and the lot today is kind of in disrepair. And so that would also need to be, I think, addressed. And then I do think that the side of Outer Dyke Hotel is a big white wall, is potentially an opportunity instead of to just leave it white. And I think, you know, maybe they could do something more creative than just leaving that blank, and thinking that through, but making it more vibrant than just the white wall. And I don't have a problem with the C-Train pop-up. I think, you know, like Firestone Brewery has one down in Buellton on their back property, and not Firestone, Fig. Sorry guys, Fig. And it, you know, it works and it's contemporary. And it's a little kind of a little spot, yeah. And I don't have any issue with that. But I do think some of these other broader material details matter and should be thoughtful and just not look temporary. So I guess that's my headline.
Yep.
Well, and that kind of goes back to my comments about where the fence is and such. So as I, you know, again, watching how people use that space, they really don't walk on the sidewalk in front of Outer Dyke Inn. They walk down the middle of the road. And especially since the only access into that area comes straight off the road, what I would really like to see is some way that they could go down the sidewalk in front of Outer Dyke Hotel and over and into this area or setting the fence back so there was room for a sidewalk that didn't require them to walk in the road to get to the entrance of it, because there's nowhere else in town where that really
Yeah,
happens.
I'd love to see that clarified, because it looks like on the rendering, that you can just walk straight in. That
Right,
side.
and,
Yeah.
and not clear if that's the case, and if that.
Yeah, it looks like a gate's there.
Which would be optimal, but
Yeah.
would that gate be open only when the bocce ball courts are open, which I'm assuming would be relatively,
Yeah,
Regular hours.
that pedestrian way, as it exists now, really shows up on page 46 of the materials where there's, I guess, a flagpole there.
So one of the items here is the issue of what's required by alcohol beverage control as far
Yes.
as an identified space and how the public accesses that space
Yes.
for sale of alcohol. And so the access is really important in determining how people come into that space and what's covered.
Okay.
So it's a good comment, and we need to make sure we're clear on how that relates to the requirements not only for ADA access, but also for ABC.
Yeah.
And so we're working through those
Okay.
issues.
Okay, and so I have one last thing, because I know this little area fairly well, I walk through it all the time. And it's, can we see this again, or is it too late?
So you go, the next
Not that
one.
one. Not that one.
that one.
This little sidewalk right here is very narrow. And once you close that off, because you've got a lot of people walking through, it seems like that walkway should be wider to me, because that is so little. And if you got a bunch of people milling around, that could even be possibly an issue for safety or something, but it also just looks like it's almost slamming against the other
Right.
green slate. So, in my mind, I would recommend widening that sidewalk, or at least not having the gate go all the way up to that, because it is really quite narrow. So,
And it's also a thoroughfare for the public parking lot in the back.
Right.
And if that is also their parking lot, it's hard, it would seem difficult for them to complain about that kind of pathway through. So again, as much as there's some other concerns, my biggest concern was the access here, especially pedestrian traffic, because there's gonna be a lot of pedestrian traffic. How do they get in and out without having to just come straight out into the street there? And as much as, during the time that Copenhagen remains closed, which may not be a factor when they complete this, but this looks like that their intent is to start construction relatively quickly. Having people have to walk in the middle of the road to enter your business doesn't make sense to me.
Good comments. Good comments.
I will say that
Yep.
I'm not sure that people will stop walking in the middle of that road, even
No.
if there's a sidewalk. I mean,
No.
I'm one of those people, I will admit, and
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
business is just up the block
Yeah.
a little ways, and then my home is the other way. Walk through there a lot, and I don't see a lot of people milling around in that. That's what I was saying earlier, that seems like a lot of wasted space. I don't think people generally cut that way, although I'm not the expert on it, but I don't know what the solution is. I mean, I agree, it would be nice to come up with something, but I'm not sure that people won't still just, because that seems like a cul-de-sac there, it feels like the end of the road for
Yeah.
people. And then they get down there and they're all, oh, wait a minute, there's an alley this way, you know?
Well, and you can't access it from the other side of the street because of the, slope in the road and such there.
Right.
So, it is, but so I think that the access there really needs to be thought out carefully.
Right. And there's, I know some of the barriers they have there are ABC issues where you gotta make sure you have
Yeah, has to be closed off.
constraints for,
Demarcated
yeah,
areas.
you're right, exactly.
But I think that they need to take that into consideration, that there needs to be a public walkway area as well as an area that's gated off for, to meet ABC needs.
Right, very good.
But again, going back to the overall concept, because we're looking at,
Yeah.
we're nitpicking it. The overall concept is fun. I think it'll be again, it'll fill a void that exists for that kind of activity in the community and be an improvement on, at that.
On an empty lot, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I sort of the same thing. I mean, there are some issues for sure, but I think, the concept itself is really interesting, and I think it could really be a nice net add. I think there are some design issues, construction issues that send messages about, what we're serious about. But I think you'll be able to communicate all that to
Yeah, and
the planning commission, what?
and I think that one of the things that really will be critical to how it all comes together is that this looks really intentional. It wasn't just like, this is an empty lot, we threw up a fence and
Yeah,
put up a
that's-
container. It needs to look intentional, well thought out, and perhaps that'll be a bit more cumbersome on the applicant. But I think overall, the project would be really a good improvement to the area. And again, really important to consider planting and lighting along with, the other factors and umbrellas and style of fence and all of that.
And to be clear, they will then come back to us with those specifics for us to see, right?
we will have this material and our response back to them for their initial submittal and say, please provide more details on all of these items
So
that
we'll
were
see the
raised
stuff.
at the DRC. And those materials need to be provided to the planning commission, so they have the same materials
Right.
that you're gonna see later as far as final approvals. So this is an iterative process,
Yeah.
and we wanna make sure that everybody has the same information as we're moving through.
So if I was the one proposing this, I would want to know at the end of this meeting, how does the design review board feel about that container building? Because that's, I mean, I think you expressed how you felt, but as a whole, I know we're not making a decision or we're not
Yeah.
making a motion or anything, but I mean, generally speaking, it seems like people are somewhat in favor of the container bar.
I know.
Yeah, I'm okay with it,
Yeah.
as long as they've, done what they need to do in making it secure, and
Sure.
I'm not a fan of a TV screen in there. I don't know if that's actually allowed, but maybe
I
it
think
is.
it's possible to make it look rattier than it needs to be.
Yeah.
And, I think they ought to resist that it ought to look like it belongs in the heart of Solveig's district, business district. But I think the concept is great, and I think that's a caveat on that building. But done well, I think it would enhance the area. And overall, I think I have a sense that the overall concept is intriguing and welcome.
And just my only last comment, going back to you, Jennifer, is that fence by Silk Road, just really looking at how it integrates in the entire complex there, has all come together, because if this whole thing is beautiful and done, and that fence that is less than, stable remains, that is going to detract from it. So as we put into the entire project, or the entire complex.
Okay, good discussion? Thank you. have
Open it
enough
up to the
information?
public if there's anybody that.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
And
Anyone in the
I wanna
public?
be on a bocce ball team that goes and plays that.
Nancy, I see your hand is up.
I wanted to make it clear that when I was speaking before and now, I'm speaking for We Watch and the Save Our Stars Committee, which has been in existence since 2000. This is an interesting project. They're proposing a kind of colonial solar-powered lantern lamp, which takes care of the problem of lack of permanency, but I'm not sure they're going to be able to find such a lamp with the light source in the cap. And I would suggest that they look at Skip Mesa, the old part and nearest 246, at the streetlights, which are fully shielded, to get an idea of how much light will be dispersed on the site, particularly for an activity such as bocce, which is a sport, and people like to have considerable light to be sure that the game's going the way it should. So it seems like they may need to consult with a lighting engineer who might be able to suggest if there's some kind of attractive sports-related lighting that could solve that problem. But I agree with you, it's an interesting project.
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. Any other comments from the public? Final comments here. I don't think there's really any action necessary to be taken at this time. But we look forward to following the progress of this project.
Thank you
Okay,
very much.
it is 6:25. We have one more item, the status of, it relates to another intriguing project, the 1524, 1532, 1540 vacation rentals and swimming pool. And then other items, do you want to take a break or do you want to?
I'm okay for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on, that's fine. Just wanted to give people an opportunity. So we were on we're on 6A. Laura, you have a report on the action that's, I guess, starts on page 47 of our materials.
Correct. This is a request by Lansby. They're interested in acquiring these 3 parcels to provide vacation rental cottages and also a pool. The current hotel does not have a pool, and they would like to basically call this the annex, that they could send their tenants from or the renters at the hotel to the pool area and have an area to relax. This stretch of Copenhagen Drive is zone DR20, but the vacation rental ordinance allowed for vacation rentals along this one segment of Copenhagen. And so that's why the previous project that you saw about 3 months ago had the 3 vacation rentals on it. This is the lot right next door to that. And the vacation rental, I don't know if you can show the site plans. So the concept is basically this view with the pool and cottage. This is a gateway that they are proposing along Copenhagen.
One more, I think.
Yeah. And so this is basically, you can see along the top part is the frontage of Copenhagen. There's the 3 residential lots. And then they'll be providing, they're looking at between 10 and 11 units on this site. Most of them are 1 bedrooms. There is one proposed 2-bedroom cottage. And then they have the amenities for the pool area itself. Go ahead to the next slide. The proposal is that these are quaint, small, 1-story units. Next slide. Oh, that's it. And they provided a floor plan. This is preliminary review. They have not submitted an application yet. They want to continue to evolve the site plan and their ideas about the buildings themselves. But they would love to hear from the DRC as to your thoughts on this particular project. So I want to go back to the site plan. I know the applicant is here, and so if you'd like to listen to their presentation.
Yes.
I have some additional information as well. So when you see.
If you could come up to the mic, please.
This is just like a bigger version of it where you see the site plan.
Excuse me. So what you need to do is introduce yourself.
I'm sorry.
And stay on the mic as much as possible.
Okay. My name's Janice Lesson, and I'm representing the Lansby today. Hold
I'll
on.
hold this up.
Oh, okay. So basically, this is the location. So it's catty corner to the Lansby. Like Lori mentioned that we want to add a pool, which I have another slide for, but our goal was to provide a lot of kind of like street, oh, okay. So we're taking a takeoff of the Lansby, and this is just preliminary. We were thinking about, we want security around the pool. We also, the pool is only going to be accessible to our existing hotel guests, and the guests staying in the cottages. So you can see this was just the front of the Lansby, so we took an inspiration off of that. This would be card key access to get into there. And we were thinking about placing that, you pull in and out one area. Is somewhere in here, we might carry it over, use more landscaping. So I just wanted to get feedback on your thoughts around that. And then when we go to the cottages, which I can hold up one more. These cottages, we want to tie them in, again, to the look of the Lansby. Right now we use this aged brick, so we were thinking about like a little landing with the aged brick, like a pale yellow awning, window boxes, and just have these be like our top end cottages. Right now we have a huge demand for higher end units, so we found that our junior suites and our village suite are the ones that are selling out the quickest, which is a big change from when we first opened. We often had our cheapest rooms sell out first. So there is a demand for these cottages, especially like around a pool. And so our goal is to make the construction like high-end construction with really nice finishes. And I guess that's it. We're just looking for feedback.
I have a question, since all these things are here.
Yes.
Well, and that's so.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
When we look at this
Yes.
plan, so right off the street is the parking.
Yes, currently there's parking that is just diagonal to the street, which our understanding is that's not advantageous in the city. I don't think it's within the, I guess,
That
ordinances.
section, the section of that road doesn't have a sidewalk right now, and they
Yeah.
just kind of pull in there
And you-
diagonally or just pull onto the side. So the requirement would be that they would need to complete the road frontage, curb, gutter, sidewalk, and bring the parking into the project. And
Okay,
that's what you're.
that's what.
Yeah. So
Parking
that's
is
why-
required to be on site.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And plus, we want parking on site, like our goal is to have people check in. We have that porte share at the, in the entrance of the Lansby. People check in there, they get their card key, and then they have a dedicated parking spot when they get to the cottages. Which again, they just kind of go out the back and park there.
Okay. So my second question then is so there's cars parked here, and then does this, a cool thing, it's beautiful, but does it go all the way across the front of the
Our plan,
property,
so
or
when you see,
does
our
it cover?
current plan is
what's going
to,
on?
so here's the street, Copenhagen, so you pull into parking here, park. Our plan was to wall it off here, so this area is private, so the parking would
Okay.
not be on the inside of the wall.
Okay.
I mean, we're fleshing some of that out, if you have any really strong feelings about that one way or the other. If we did put the wall in the front, then we'd have to do something with card key access into parking, which might be helpful ultimately, but I do think if we dedicate these spots to the actual units, we shouldn't have necessarily a parking problem.
Okay, yeah, I was just curious as to where this feature
Yeah.
went on in that plan. So thank you.
Likewise. Is that wall, how tall is the wall on either side of the arch? Is that a visual barrier that you don't see the cottages then?
I think that you'll see the cottages to some extent, but that was another thing on height. our goal is to try and, I know that there's another, there's the Wine Valley Inn, and then there's another vacant lot that's now being developed. So we want to have some scale so it doesn't look odd next to it, and that was the idea of having that archway maybe be up a little bit bigger. So we were thinking maybe 5 or 6 feet tall, have plants and vegetation around it. We're open to building that taller if you don't want to see the units, but we really tried to make them as like kind of cottagey, cute.
And there is a great,
Sorry.
there is a great differential as you start moving down. As you go from the street into the property, there is a little bit of a drop off, so the fence will need to take that into consideration.
So the cottages will sit below the level where the wall is.
Potentially, and
Yeah.
so that's one of the items, like, do they need to, when we're designing this, are you okay with seeing, maybe the awnings and, some portion of the buildings?
I don't have any issues with seeing the buildings. I don't wanna see people in their bathing suits walking,
Oh, I know,
right?
for
So
sure.
you don't wanna see that,
Yeah.
which is, I think it needs to be high enough that's private and you feel protected, whether, if you're out there by the pool too, right?
Yeah, so I'm 6 foot tall, so we were thinking between 5 and 6 foot tall, so I think that would
Yeah.
cover people in their bathing suits for
Yeah.
the most part,
So
yeah.
I think that's
Plus there's
key.
a driveway between, it looks like there's a driveway between the wall and
And
the
the
pool
street.
area.
And you'd have that wall though on the south side of that drive-through.
Correct.
Mhm.
So it seems
Oh,
like
so
by
on the
time-
south side,
Mhm.
okay, let's just make sure that, so are you asking if we're gonna have a wall here
No,
or here?
So when they
right,
put,
I'm just talking about just on the north side, right there. That's-
Okay, yeah, the wall would be here, and we may extend it here or just use plantings to extend it, like hedges or something.
But either way, it looks like okay, like on the front side of the parking spots behind the wall, there's a one-way driveway.
Yes.
And so, I guess my thinking is, to your comment about the bathing suits, if you have a 5 or 5.5 foot wall, and then you have that much space in between, plus the grade of the lot is
Yeah.
going down, it doesn't sound like that would be an issue.
No,
so just to be clear,
Yeah.
the wall is not at street.
Right, it's not.
It's
No, I got that.
the
It's- no,
parking
it's
and then the driveway
It's-
and then the wall.
Beyond
Yes.
parking.
Yeah.
Oh, got it, okay,
Okay.
so that driveway, the one-way driveway in the image is
In front of the
Street
wall.
is in
facing.
front of the wall, okay, I'm sorry, I was
Yeah.
thinking that it was up a little higher.
and I guess as we develop this, one of my questions would be, would you be opposed to the parking being inside the wall? Or if we chose to redo that, is that, I think our goal is to make it look nice anyway. We're not gonna put the parking, I think the only reason why is if we wanted to secure the parking.
No,
but-
I personally think you should put the wall and hide the parking. I would do that. I
Yeah.
would protect it and hide it, and it'll look better from the street. I
So-
mean, people don't like to look at parking spots or, and it will take the beauty away of what you're trying to achieve.
So one of our issues is that part of what we're doing with the pool is we're using that wall to fence in the pool and to
Right.
provide security, so it's just working through those nuances, right, yeah,
But
of what's
I don't
practical.
think anyone cares about looking at parking, a
Well,
parking lot.
And so
Yeah.
speaking of parking, I think that is one
That's-
concern that immediately came to mind
Yeah,
is
me
that
too.
it appears as though you have, am I reading this correctly, 11 spaces? And you're required to have 22 spaces?
So we're working with the planning and the building department on that now, because for residential typically you're correct, there's 2 spaces. But we've found that people in one room are not necessarily traveling in multiple cars. And it's in our best interest to provide adequate parking to our guests, because especially in our high-end, rooms, which this would be, if we didn't have enough parking for them and we felt we needed more parking, we would add that. But we don't have an instance in a 1-bedroom unit really where people are bringing multiple cars.
And that makes sense to me. I think what I was thinking about was not as much guests, because would be less common, that there would be two cars coming maybe occasionally.
Yeah.
But there's also staff that needs to be parking.
Yeah.
You've got a public parking facility next door
Right.
and some spaces along the street, but that's already in high demand.
Right.
So are there enough parking spaces at the Lansby for their staff and their guests? And then this would be just specifically for, the guests at the new pool cottage accommodations. But can those staff members who are working there get spaces in the underground garage on site, or,
I mean,
how is
that's
that
where they're
addressed?
currently parking, and to my knowledge, like, we don't necessarily have a parking issue, although we do issue parking passes to our guests. It's somewhat difficult to control who parks there because of the restaurant and the bar and people coming and going. But we don't have a significant parking problem that I'm aware of at this point.
And people from the Lansby would walk down there, I gather? Is that
Yes.
how that would work?
Mhm.
Yeah, you would-
Okay, and then there'd be some sort of, obviously, admission control.
There'd be
I
a
guess
car
there'd
key
car
access
key
with your,
access.
yeah.
So when I was looking at it, and I know that you've indicated that the requirement in the code is 2 parking spaces for each unit. Now, I don't know, that my count is you have 10 one-bedroom units and 1 two-bedroom unit, is that right?
Yes, and really that's just an estimate. We were trying to figure out how many units we could get on
Yeah.
the parcel and still make it comfortable, so we're playing with that. I think the minimum we want is 10, and like I mentioned at the beginning, that our most popular unit is the Village Suite, which is a bedroom with a very large living room and its own patio. And so we were thinking of needing something like that. So 2-bedroom, we may not do a 2-bedroom, we may
Yeah.
just do a larger,
Yeah,
like,
that, but
suite.
I see there is a 2-bedroom, and that's just only one of those.
Yes.
But that's 1 unit, just like the 1-bedrooms, I guess, are 1 unit.
So we would
So-
assume that if we did a 2-bedroom, that we would be required potentially to have 2 parking spaces for that
Yes.
unit.
Right, and so I count if there are 11 units, and it's 2 parking spaces per unit, then you have a technical requirement under the code of 22 spaces for the project, and you have 10 here, plus a handicap
Yeah.
parking space, so that's 11 then, right?
Mhm.
So you essentially have half of the number you require, is that how you see the numbers?
And yes, and we've had discussions about this, and the differential here is the fact that these are very small cottages with 1 bedroom,
Right.
whereas most of the vacation rental projects that we've had come forward, the one next door in
Multiple,
Copenhagen, as well as the one over on Mission Drive. Those were all 2 bedrooms with a living room, with a full kitchen. These are 1 bedrooms with a wet bar.
It seems like, and I know the requirements there dates back a long ways, I don't know when, but it seems like it ought to be based on bedrooms, not units.
And-
Because, you have all of these single bed units, except one that's 2-bedroom, and I thought, just personally, and I didn't know what the requirement was, I don't know what the requirement is in the hotel, what if they have a parking requirement based on,
It's a calculation.
yeah, but, right now, applying that 2 parking spaces on site, to this project, you're short by, you have half of what you need.
Right.
And, yeah.
So I think that logic is why Lori and the planning department and the building department have agreed to look at it and do hopefully what makes sense to everyone.
Yeah, and I think my sense is if it were, in looking at that, I think that the 2 per unit, I think that's pretty, I could imagine it 2, 1 per bed or something like that.
Mhm.
But one other way, and I don't know if you're probably not intrigued with this, to capture half of that shortfall would also mean, I'm looking at the 2 units on the far west end and have parking there, and then you'd be you'd have two less units, and I know that's affects the P&L. But, but that also
Right.
would provide, let's say, 5 spaces or so for you, and you recover half of your shortfall. But, you know, that's, you know, as you work through the items, I think that may be also something to consider to work through. And I think, you know, saying that half of the standard is, if that's the standard we're gonna stick with, I think that's a pretty large
So what's,
concession.
the process that we have before us is that this project will be submitted as a development plan. It'll
Yeah.
go through like all of the other projects, and when they're full package, we will be coming back to you on the official process and report back on the comments that you have, as well as how they've resolved the design features that they're presenting here now and listening to what you have to say. And, you know, they have the option of asking for a modification to the requirement, paying for or going through what they call the parking in lieu fee,
Right. I
or
understand.
other options with, working with their neighbors or working with the Lansby and giving us a full report on how the parking is working at the Lansby, how they could park, tenants that are here, over there.
Yeah.
There's a number of ways we can work through this to encourage some, you know, work through this development plan process.
It does seem like there's probably room for a compromise there between 2 per unit. However, it would also seem like there should be at least 1 per unit
I agree with
plus
that.
a handicap, and if it's a 2-bedroom unit, that would require potentially 2. So I think those things do need, so no matter.
And we don't
how-
disagree with that. And like I said, it's like our goal is to provide adequate parking to our guests. So it would be odd to have one of the units and show up and not have a place to park. So, yeah, we definitely plan on adding enough parking for them.
I'd like to have a little more understanding of the style of the cottages. They seem very
Rustic?
And they're prefab.
temporary,
Yeah.
almost.
Yeah.
So they are, they're constructed off-site and delivered to the site. So we looked at a number of them. We went to, and so there's kind of a difference now between prefab, manufactured homes, et cetera. What we were impressed by these is that they're actually stick construction. They're strictly just manufactured off-site, so they have drywall, there's real tile, they use Marvin windows and doors, and the quality feeling of them are really nice. They're also already approved with the state of California to fall under the ADU requirements. So there's certain components of it, while they've customized this for us to with the half timbers and the wood siding that is really actually beautiful because I've seen it in person. There are certain things that they can't change because it would change their whole building process, et cetera. So one of the things that this doesn't show that I think will also change it up quite a bit is, you know, landscaping and trees and our furniture. We have 2 little red chairs like on the patio, but the awnings, the window boxes, and things like that. I think I understand your concern, and we had a concern too until we worked with the company and went through this to make sure that they kind of still fit the Lansby look and feel, because that's what people are coming for.
They seem real short in this image. Being a tall person, I'm looking at how little roof line there is above the
You
window.
know, I'm a tall person too, and
So-
I you know what, in the package, there are elevations.
I
Yes.
think it's a
I know.
12-foot, it's a 12-foot roof, so it's not short, like, yeah, right.
Yeah, they felt very roomy and tall inside.
What is the material you're thinking of for the roof?
The roof is shingled roof. They have an option of doing a metal standing seam roof, but that made it look more contemporary when we mocked it up, so we decided to go with the kind of like gray-black shingle.
In some ways, it reminds me a little bit of when you go down Copenhagen and there's the buildings that weren't originally Danish that were made to look
Yeah.
Danish, like the,
Yeah.
Rasmussen's building that has the arches and,
Total.
so I mean, I think it's a nice compromise to a building that's built on site. It has a little bit of a modern feel, but, the half timbers and, as you said, the sort of accessories take it to a different place.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's an interesting concept for sure. I think it's a great solution. As I talked with Lori before the meeting, it may also be a solution to housing shortages along the coast, where you at least see these housing obligations you said between Buellton and Carpinteria or something like that. It's 14,000 housing units. And sometimes something as modest as that can help them.
They're not necessarily inexpensive, however, when you factor in just the ease of having them already constructed off-site, so you don't have the noise and all the disruption. You have a finite cost, so you know what your costs are gonna be before you start construction, which, having been through a number of construction projects, that's not always the case. And the timeline is shortened substantially typically, so that was one of the reasons why we
Are
looked
they in
at this.
California?
Pardon?
Are they manufactured in California?
They are. They're up in Redmond City. It's like right outside of San Francisco.
I think that as I look at this and think of the Lansby, some of my confidence in the finished appearance comes from knowing that Lansby is very good at putting in the necessary elements to bring it all together, because that's what it really requires. It requires the landscaping, it requires the potentially some bricks and
Yeah.
things to make it tie in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still having a little bit of a hard time seeing it without, physically seeing a structure, just because, again, it looks a little bit like a bit like the area over in the Checo courtyard there, which used to be a motor court at one time. So, but I think you've addressed it well with the wall, and the arch to give it a height is a complement to the aesthetic. Yeah.
I really like the wall. I like the planting over the top. I realize it's not your final
Right.
thing, but I think that's a nice touch. It makes it it softens it. It kind of takes it from being just a sheer wall, and also just having the columns in between. It feels like a nod both to sort of Denmark and to California, honestly, with the arches and.
Totally agree. And it gives it sort of a really nice exclusive, almost resort kind of cool look. So.
Yeah, I think it is too.
The one thing, I mean, I got sort of, I know Lansby, you guys are, but your rendering on the little cottage was like so hard to read and look. So when you come back, and I know staff will tell you too, the more you bring us, the better it looks.
We can bring finishes, like what the wood siding looks like is really pretty.
Like real
We'll
stuff.
definitely give you more information. 'Cause
Painted swatches and all that.
Okay.
It just makes it go faster.
Okay.
Great.
Very important, and what seems to be bringing it all together is it's making it, those prefab units, I believe I used that right.
Manufactured.
Manufactured, there, I knew it was one of those, that it makes it look more permanent. And not more permanent, makes it look permanent by the way it's put in and what you do with the details around it. And we look forward to seeing more of those, I think, as the
Yeah, and I
process
guess the
goes.
distinction now is because they are permanent, they're built to be a permanent structure, not to be a mobile structure and be moved around in different, and that's one of the distinctions why some of these companies that are like that are starting to brand themselves as manufactured off-site versus calling them prefab or mobile or anything else like that, so
Well, I think
it's interesting. It's definitely an evolution.
Yeah, certainly a trend, and I mean, times are changing, right? And we're all thinking different ways about how we're gonna do things, and we know that the construction process is hard. So my first thought isn't necessarily like, oh, it's a manufactured, I have an open mind about it, because I think you could probably build something just as well off-site as you can on-site, and maybe even better in some cases,
absolutely.
So I'm open to it for sure.
That's great.
Yeah, I think you have 5 good luck.
Yay, good. Well, I appreciate your time and your feedback, it's
And the
important.
property down there is somewhat like the other building, or the Boccegal proposal, in that this is an area that is in need of some attention, and,
Yeah, it is.
and in the end, this seems like it will address a lot of things and be a really nice addition to the Lansby to offer the pool and amenities to the guests as well.
Yeah, no, it's a big
It's a
deal.
creative use of the property.
Great. Thank you for your time. I look forward to
Thank
having
you.
back.
Great idea. Are there any other public comments that anyone online have? Yes, Nancy.
Nancy Emerson speaking for We Watch Save Our Stars. I would just like to remind the applicant that we require fully shielded light fixtures in Solvang, and this means that the light source is not visible in the light fixture. And also, there was an unfortunate experience with the Lansby when it was remodeling before your time. They had purchased light fixtures that were non-conforming and asked for forgiveness, which was given. But I would caution you not to purchase any light fixtures until they've been approved, please. Also, we are asking that the light source be what we call warm rather than the cool blue-white light that sometimes one sees with LEDs. And that means a Kelvin reading of 3,000 or less. So good luck, and we'll look forward to seeing the lighting plan.
Thanks for your comments, Nancy, as always. Any other comments online or in the room here in Solvang? Okay, I think we don't have any other action really. We've shared our comments. I think we're kind of all
Thank you for your input.
attuned.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Planning status report.
Okay, we have a presenter here with us today, so I would like to first move to what's been noticed as the City of Solvang official logo. This is not something that we are asking for you to give us official approval, but it's something that we are really looking for your feedback, as we think that this is a great group to run this by. So just as a way of purview or background, I would like to say that we've been discussing the logo and the city website, and there is two sides to the logo. One is being the marketing side of the logo, which we're also working on with IDK and the website update for the Solvang USA. And then parallel with that, we're working on our official city website update and redesign, and also updating the logo. And so as your group with your expertise would know, that the logo is pretty important in terms of determining the overall look and feel and appearance of both of those websites. So we have one version that we've been working with our consultant for the website redesign. We have that version to present to you, which was recently presented to the City Council. But the City Council also came back when I brought it to them and discussed the logo that Rene was great at developing before, and wanted to see if that could be an option as well. So Rene Karskov, actually from Copenhagen House on Copenhagen, has developed a logo that could be used free of charge by the city. And he's also worked on a little bit of modifications to that as of recently. So
Okay.
he's here.
We look forward to hearing him, and please come up, but we had signed ordinance enforcement, before that item on the agenda. He's here now, and you'll get back to this.
Correct,
enforcement
yes.
After this, okay, so we're a little adjustment in the order of the agenda.
Thank you. Thanks for doing what you're doing. I know it's not easy. not always appreciated. Sina, do you have the presentation or?
I do, in a PDF form, so I'll just kind of scroll through it.
Okay, so we looked at this 3 years ago, the whole branding concept, and at the end, we did a logo. At that time, I said, the logo is the least important. What you are and what you want to be is much more important, but we're going back to the logo. So when these 3 versions that Senior presented about two meetings ago came up, I contacted Senior and said, you need help, in my mind. And if Senior can pull it up, I'll show you what we did back then.
Give me just a second, and we'll start feed.
Okay.
Thank you for waiting through that long meeting to get to this.
No problem. What we did back then was more of a beige version, I think, and I kind of listened to the city council's input last time, and I heard the words blue and red, and that's kind of what we try to incorporate this time.
Can you clarify while she's pulling it up? Again, this is a logo that is looked at being used for the marketing, but not necessarily the city, it's stationery, etc. This
No.
is for the website.
So this one is actually a version that will be used for the city and the city's official business. However, based on, I think the council brought up a good point when this item went to the council, that there could be a connection and a theme between, the 2 logos. Obviously, one needs to be more official, one is meant for identifying official city documents, versus the other one is meant for attracting tourists and speaking to the destination. So this logo today is for the city. However, of course, if there is any positive comments that the DRC has on it and how it could be used for marketing, logo development, that we are also, as I mentioned, are working on with IDK, we would love that comment as well.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, because it does seem like they should at least complement each other or carry a theme,
Correct.
consistent theme there.
And when we looked at it back then, you have about 10, 12 different versions of logos used inconsistently. So the more consistent, the stronger the impact.
Yeah, and I think that's the big
Yeah.
thing is
Okay,
that
here we go.
kind of across the platforms. Okay.
So this is just some pages from the original presentation we did. It's not all relevant, but there you see all your different versions you have today. And then we came up with a version at the time. It's not exactly this one. It was a more beige one at the time, but I listened to what was said at the meeting. We like the navy blue, we like the red. Personally, I would be careful with red. I know Netflix, Coca-Cola, and CVS like red. It's aggressive, it's vibrant, has a lot of energy. But when I go down the street at night in Salt Lake, I don't feel...
You feel blue.
Yeah, and red is also a stop sign. It's also a red cross. It's also blood. So you got to be careful not going too red. But I did, my guys, they did put the red lines in there. I don't know if it really connects with the Danish flag, but I know that was a comment, but there it is. You talked about 2 logos before. I mean, we made a version here also because in social media, sometimes the original logo doesn't fit right in. Sometimes it's a circle. I do like the City of Salt Lake thing personally that I established 1911. I think it's a good city logo if you do want 2 of them. And that's just some applications we did back then, and we just applied the new colors to it. So that's pretty much what
So
we suggested.
one of them, you had those, what looks like furrowed land in front of it or whatever, those underneath the
Or the
window.
emblem.
Underneath the window. You know, like,
Yeah.
Farmland.
Yeah.
Is that what that is? It's farmland, or is it supposed to represent anything?
Or vineyards.
Whatever you wanted.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the vineyards are like the vineyard. You can also argue when people first came, the Danes first came here, that's what it was, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, sunny field, that's
sunny
what
fields, there you go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So, trying to figure out a way that that would work in. I was on the committee when the Solvang Centennial logo was selected, and I actually wish that some of that artwork had been maintained. I wasn't responsible for keeping that because there were some that were kind of along some of these lines that could have been potentials. I like the little bits of red with it, very subtle, but it also, you've got that kind of red, white, and blue, and you've got the red and white, and I think that's a nice addition. The current logo with the Little Mermaid for the city definitely is noted as Danish, whereas windmills are that Dutch versus Danish, and yet I think what I hear from people is what they identify most with in Solvang is the windmill, not the Little Mermaid. So it's that real, that kind of careful deciding of a logo so that we are identified as a community by the Danish, not the Dutch, which tends to be the conflict there.
I hate to admit I'm a transplant, but having grown up visiting Solvang and then later becoming a resident here, for me, when I think of Solvang and anybody who comes to town, anybody who I guess doesn't live here specifically, the first thing that's talked about is the windmills.
Absolutely.
For me, I got to be honest, I didn't really understand what the mermaid was. I mean, I know what the Little Mermaid is, but in looking at the logo now, I always thought, what is that weird? And then I realized one day it was like I put it together. I was like, oh, the mermaid statue, and so to me, the existing logo is it's lovely, but it doesn't. I don't think it makes a big statement as to who we are. I think the windmill is a better statement in that regard, and I also I sort of disagree with the red. I mean, I understand what you're saying about the red, but the red certainly does signify the Danish flag, which is a big part of Danish, Solvang. So I'm in favor of some red color. I like this a lot. I stayed up pretty late for that city council meeting that the logos were presented. City council certainly stayed up late.
Yeah.
And I agree that those weren't, those logos were lovely, but they weren't necessarily in exactly the right direction. I personally like the, I guess it's not up anymore, that's okay. I like the depiction of the land in front of it, because again, this is an agricultural area in addition to being sort of a Danish tourist town. So anyway, that's just, I think that's a nice looking logo. But I like the one depicted here with the kind of round bottom, where the whole thing looks like a stamp versus the one where it goes across. Although the one where it goes across is more obvious, so I think that's a nice option too.
Well, and it's like you said, you gotta have all those different adaptations of it. The one for the city works really well. And having it established, or just the 1911 in there, it says established, I think is a nice addition to it.
Yeah.
And there's, when you're right, Joy, totally about Solvang. People recognize Solvang by windmills.
And clogs.
Yeah, definitely. And there's something that's more visually eye-catching, appealing to the windmill than there is to the mermaid as well.
Though I do agree that it is often translated to Dutch, which I'm constantly, but I don't think that's gonna change necessarily, that
I don't
people are
either.
gonna stop associating the two.
No.
Would you like some red in the round one?
I guess I shouldn't have said that it needed to be red per se. I just was saying that I think that red is also a compelling color for a Danish style logo.
Right.
I do think, I mean, if someone were to say like, what color do you think of when you think of Danish? I would say red. So that's kind of where I was going with that. I wasn't necessarily saying it needs to be red.
Are you asking us to just comment on both options or choose?
Comment on both options.
Okay.
So So there's no
Alright.
action, but you just general comments on
Yes.
Now,
which
both
way.
options being, just to clarify.
This and the other page, right?
Correct, so this would be the Rainey's logo, and then we also have a little bit reworked logos that we have prepared as part of the city's website redesign. We've updated those a little bit based on comments, so what we're really looking for from you is just general guidance. If this is the version that we should work on and, you know, tweak a little bit and make this the logo, then that's good comment and direction, or if the other style of logos is what we should continue to work on, that's the direction. So after we're done with this discussion, then we'll pull up the other slides with the other versions of logos, and then you can just hopefully give us a little bit of feedback on, they're very different stylistically,
Yeah.
so you'll be able to definitely comment on which stylistic direction we should be going in.
I think we all quite like this.
Mhm.
So now we're gonna compare this to some other stuff?
Correct.
Okay.
Really briefly.
So my preference of these two, while I like the established 1911, absolutely, and the city of Solvang, I don't know that I like it better than the other one, the other slide.
You're talking about the kind of horizontal one versus?
This one. So to me, like, if you added established 1911, I would say I love that one. And I don't know that you need the fields. Only for me, it's the field lines are very similar to the lines of the windmill. And so it's a lot of dense horizontal
Busy.
stamping feel. Yeah, busy, thank you.
Well, okay, so maybe I
Simple.
misunderstood, because I thought that it was just kind of a variation depending upon the use, whether it was going to be applied in a horizontal versus a round. So were you, Rennie or team, were you asking us for
That's what I
feedback
was
on
asking,
one
yeah.
versus the other?
I mean, we kind of looked at it, that's the logo, the other one is a version of that
That's what-
logo.
that's
You
what
can
call the
use
emblem.
You can use
Okay.
in social media, you can turn it into an emblem, stamp, whatever, but it's still the same kind of logo, it's the same windmill.
Okay, that's what I got out of it, so this is
That's
kind of.
fine, but I think this one should have the established 1911 on it.
Also, I'm assuming that you're, let's take this logo, for instance. I don't know, in my graphic design days, I made a lot of things for a lot of different types of publications, and sometimes it might be like, I needed to send a logo to something that had a dark background, which this obviously wouldn't work on, right, because it's dark. So you would probably have a version of that that would be white or just flipped. Right, okay.
Yeah, could you go to the one with the round? So I think for me, as I look at these emblems, the one that says City of Solvang, I like that one. The one below it has too many lines on it, it doesn't work the same way that the one that the city has, to me.
I agree.
I agree.
I like both this and the previous slide. The previous one, it seems, can we see? Yeah, that one, yeah. Yeah, I think this just really works as something that can be applied to lots of things, and then you don't have to get fussy with how you
Right.
type, and then it's just fun. I like this a lot, but what this one does to me, it lacks that sort of modern, there's just like, it looks like it's all old feeling. Where the other ones, with the design and the boldness of it, gives it a more modern, just a slightly more modern, so it's like Old Danish and Danish modern at the same time. So if there's something here, I mean, this would look great on a box of Danish cookies or something, you know, I mean, it would have a real traditional, authentic look.
I kind of think of the entrance to the city when I see that. When I drive in, I see it. Then I think the other one would be tough when you drive in,
Yeah,
this round thing.
this you get.
So
Yeah.
personally, and I'm not boss here, but as long as you keep some consistency, you can have two versions of the logo.
Sure.
I would be interested, and after I advocated for the farmland in front, but like you said, it is a little busy altogether. I'd be interested to see a version of the circular one with maybe just a solid ground in the bottom, you know, without the horizontal lines. That might be just too much of a blob, I don't know. And I don't know if there's something else that makes sense in that space, but anyway, that's just a thought.
I think though, if I'm kind of getting the feeling from all of us here is that the overall is,
Oh, yeah.
The overall direction.
yeah, is good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, I think the windmill's a huge.
And I think the windmill
improvement.
is
Yeah.
the way, and it's time to retire the mermaid.
Yeah. That's gonna be the most difficult one, is the window right there.
Yeah. Well, not to mention, I hate to
Gosh,
say
I wish
this
there was a
too,
museum in town that could,
I could take ownership of that. You know, and for better or worse, people often associate The Little Mermaid with Disney, not that it was,
Oh,
you know, but I mean, I do
Yeah.
think that people, and so that may be another reason why it's either hard to translate or something, because people are picturing Ariel, yeah,
Ariel, yeah.
for better or worse.
Good.
Thank you, everybody, for your comments. Thank you, Renee, for
Thank you.
your
Thank you for, yeah.
free of charge work and all of your commitments.
And your patience
Thank
this
you.
evening.
and I believe that Rennie's background in this is much more than the Copenhagen house too. I believe that you have a little background in the industry that brings you to this.
Yes,
The
that's
colorful
true.
one, we aren't looking at that one today?
So,
Is
no,
that-
we're going to look at it really briefly.
Okay.
I must say that that is not one that even I would recommend, but I want to make sure that we get your comments on this style versus the other style and just go with a clear direction path forward.
And if I can, my name is David, I'm on city staff, and if I can just give a little bit of background on where we came from. As Zena mentioned, we presented some logos to city council a few weeks ago. We got comments from council, and then we gave those comments and some other staff comments to the consultant, and they modified their 3 logos. So the 3 concepts, and as you can see on the screen, one is a windmill that shows more of Solvang, shows the village, shows some agricultural fields, shows some sun rays. The second concept is a windmill, kind of similar to the concept of Rene previously. And then the third is the thought of a mermaid, which there's been a lot of conversation about that. On the next slide, similar logos, but just keeping the blue feel, which has been city's logos for a number of years. And then there goes through 3 different pages that present some different text formats. You could do a circular, a straight, or a banner, looking at each of those logos. These logos are still in the development phase, so if there were any tweaks that were suggested, we could go back and work with the consultant to make those changes. And then also they wanted to look at that. If we added a little pop of red, how does that change things? So it would give you an idea looking at the red as well.
Thank you, David. So with that, just very general comments. These are obviously extremely different options, extremely different styles. So you can limit your comments to which style you prefer or give any particular comments.
Yeah, I would say that what I see as being the biggest difference, besides the obvious of color, is the sophistication of the design. And I would like to think our city is a little bit more sophisticated than is maybe represented in the second, batch of designs. Sometimes less is more, and I think that's what's happening in many good ways with the logo that's on the screen now.
I would just echo, ditto that. Yeah, the first one was sophisticated and appropriate.
So I think we all agree that there's the modernity issue of like, how do you make it contemporary and how do you make it marketing forward? And I'm trying to put my kids' hat on, because my husband just redid his logo, and the daughters all were like, you know, he wanted something that looked like a Range Rover, like, you know, dark green, you know, racing green, and the girls are all like, no, that's not contemporary, and you need to do something much more, you know, forward. And so he ended up doing a script, which almost looks like someone hand wrote, in a way, the name of the company. And it wasn't something that I would have ever picked in a million years. But it ended up being really contemporary and really different. I think the challenge with that, where we're at with these new ones, is it's not that clever yet. It needs to be contemporary and contemporized, but it needs to be a little bit more clever than what it's doing right now. I think it looks a little bit childlike in a way. More of a cartoon than contemporary. So I think I pushed the consultant to make it maybe a little edgier and less. The volume of the shapes is very cartoon-like to me, and maybe that there's something there that can make it a little bit, keep it contemporary, but make it a little edgier. Maybe.
Well, at this point, if working with Randy and his willingness to work with the city and provide this logo, obviously he has a firm that has expertise in that. If that's the direction we're going, then we'll just not continue to work with the other consultant at this point, and we'll just make some maybe refinements, different options based on the comments here of Randy's logo, as long as he's willing to continue to work with us, and go from there as far as developing, you know, more of the city side of the logo as well as the marketing logo, and include IDK with that. So that would be the process forward.
Okay.
I think we all agree that we should stick with the windmill, right? No, we shouldn't
Yeah.
switch back to,
Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Hopefully that helped with some of it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Renee,
Yeah,
for
thank
all
you.
the work that you put into that.
Good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would look good on side of trucks and
Mhm.
on the letterhead, and
I didn't draw it myself.
that's what your
I don't
people
wanna
are
take the
for.
credit.
And thank you, David, for
yeah.
your presentation. Very good. Any other comments? I guess we'll move on to,
So another couple of things that you had asked to discuss before was the sign ordinance for code enforcement and code enforcement for the sign ordinance. Our code enforcement officer is not available today. He's been on vacation, so I could not coordinate that. I would just give you a really brief update that we are continuing to enforce. Obviously, since he was on vacation, there's a little bit of a slowdown in the last week with that enforcement, but we are continuing to enforce the sign ordinance, especially in the TRC zone. We are focusing on signs only, so some of the functional items that are, because of COVID, that are still allowed to be outside are still continue to be allowed to help the businesses. So we've allowed some of the tables, chairs, etc. extensions into outdoors. So those are not being enforced. We're only focusing on signs. We're definitely striving to be very consistent and hit all of the businesses very equally. And our code enforcement is a part-time code enforcer, but this is one of his high priorities at this time, so we'll continue with those efforts.
yeah, we've asked, you know, after the comments of the last meeting about the stickers, you know, and she pointed out that there had been a suspension of signage rules, and it was unclear when they were reinforced and how, and so we've asked for clarification on that. That helps a lot, and I think then you know, the whole issue of compliance in all sorts of areas, not just sign ordinance, but that certain one that came up with that is an opportunity to, now that you have a person on board, to have an understanding ourselves about how compliance and enforcement and inspection is expected to work and what the objectives are and so forth. Because if we can't enforce as we did with the water bill, then it's gonna be, cleaning by the door. I mean, we're not gonna be able to achieve the standard of excellence we're after. So that's where we had the conversation, and I think it sounds like we'll have some more conversation about that. I hope we're able to have him join us perhaps and, see what his challenges are and so forth. I'm sure that, you were sharing information with the city council about that and other staffing issues too, so. Are there any other comments, questions about this at this point? That's sort of a little background for it. Okay?
And then the last item on item 7 that I have that's not specifically listed on the agenda, but I did ask Chelsea, our assistant city attorney that works with you as the planning commission, to be available here in case you had any questions regarding your role as the DRC, and especially like we had an item today, the question about, well, what is the role of the planning commission, what is the role of DRC? So Chelsea has done some analysis on that, and she can answer any questions if you have any.
Did everybody get that memo? I'm not sure.
No,
Okay.
no.
She did prepare a memo on that, and I wasn't sure, of course, with Brown Act, you don't know what the
Right.
information, but, that would be, that
So-
actually I think would be useful to have.
Right.
And, we can have a conversation now. I think there's some ambiguity because of let's say, conflicts within the city ordinance, and there's holes and so forth, and she can certainly communicate that, but I think at some point we ought to have that shared with all the members of the committee, but.
We can certainly do that. Chelsea?
Well, and I think too that tonight's comments from Eric regarding the new project and the colors, clearly there's not a complete understanding as to the process, and I think we've also requested that, and I know I've talked to a couple of the planning commission members, that when they're expressing their opinions about color, that absolutely they're allowed to do that, but to please let the applicants know that that final decision lies within our body, because otherwise people like Eric walk in expecting that because that commission had given positive comments, that is a green light.
Yeah.
And we need to have clarity on that.
So I just want to say that the application that was before you all today that we were talking, with Eric, that was sort of an unusual situation because of the transition to the DRC, and it had already gone through the design review and then went to the planning commission, and then it came back. Under a development plan, typically it would be the design review committee would review it, make findings, and then provide those as recommendations to the planning commission. The planning commission would have the final decision on a development plan, so it wouldn't come back like that.
Right.
Just to clarify.
Yeah, it's an unusual situation because of sort of the interruption of the existence, I guess, of this group.
Exactly, yeah. So I guess my point there is, let's not take lessons learned from that case.
Fair enough, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
So being that all of you haven't seen, a write-up of the DRC's powers, I guess I can just provide a brief overview if that's helpful, or I'm happy to also, we could put this on an agenda for another meeting and have a more detailed discussion at that time.
Thank you.
Chelsea, my feeling is that maybe a really brief overview of what are the required items for design of the DRC versus their role as an advisory role to the planning commission would be helpful.
Certainly, yeah. So I'll start with what's the advisory role first, because that's a little more succinct. So for conditional use permits, development plans, and specific plans, and then there's also, well, yes, for those ones, then the DRC is making findings and then recommendations to the planning commission, okay? So there are specific areas in the code where the design review committee is making a decision, and that decision would then be in and of itself appealable to city council. And so when it's appealable to city council like that, that's more of a final decision. Whereas for the conditional use permits, development plans, and specific plans, the planning commission's decision based on the design review committee's recommendations is what is actually appealable for the applicant, okay? There's sort of a laundry list of things that and this is where the chair is right, that the code is not particularly clear, but there's a list of things that the DRC kind of has jurisdiction over, and those decisions would be directly appealable. And so I can give some examples if, I'm paraphrasing the code and it's a little wordy, so apologize for that. But for example, the design review committee would make decisions on alteration to landscaped areas in a multifamily, commercial, office, or industrial district. If there was a proposal to remove those areas or replace an area with a hardscape, landscape area with a hardscape. You also have authority to grant or deny sign permits, modifications to signs, and make decisions on exceptions to temporary signs. Let's see. You have the authority to decide whether to waive a roof overhang requirement for mobile homes. You can see that some of it.
Yeah, you're reading just from the code, right? I mean, that's.
It's a paraphrase of the code, but these are, so there's, and that's why I say it's kind of a laundry list, because there's some very specific areas in the code where it says the design review committee, is the decision maker for this.
Right.
And I can continue, there's more, but that makes more sense to let you guys have a chance.
Yeah, and all of it is online, you under the city's website, you can go directly, I mean, that's where I went directly to the section that requires vacation rentals to have 2 cars per bed. Or per unit. Yes, I mean, those are on, but it is in there, and it's all, another good place is the ordinance that was, or not the ordinance, the resolution that was passed by the city council that identified the provisions of the code that we're going to, they're going to replace the Board of Architecture Review or its successor agency with the design review committee. So there's that substitution that took place, and that, again, that's in the materials we already have or have available.
Yes. And so I think the important ones probably, other than having when those specific kind of detailed decisions come up before the DRC, just understanding that generally when a conditional use permit, development plan, or specific plan is coming up, that's going to be for, even though you're going to make findings on it and have a decision, that's going to then go to the planning commission, and that planning commission decision is what's appealable.
Right, I understand.
And just to clarify, I understand most of that. The one question I have goes back to that kind of color thing. So I know that, like, for instance, today, we gave some preliminary input on the new condo or vacation rental that the Landsby is putting together. Then that will come back to us as a much more detailed plan. And I believe at that point, if I'm understanding correctly, the final decisions on determinations on color lighting come from this committee.
Right, so as in the section of the code that explains what the design review committee is and its role and stuff, there's a section on findings, and one of the required findings that you all have to make to approve a permit that you're supposed to review is that whether the project is in substantial conformance with the design review committee guidelines. And so that to me is where the colors come in, right? And you all are deciding whether the colors meet that guideline. And then there's also another, I think one about making sure it's harmonious with, you know, the style.
Surrounding,
Yeah.
Yeah, so that to me is like, those are the findings that you have to make, and that's what your decision should be on. And then that goes to the planning commission. The planning commission's review is, you know, what they're looking for is compliance with the general plan and the zoning code. And then they're gonna look at your recommendations for the design review committee guidelines and the colors.
Well, yeah, it's not just colors. I mean, there's all sorts of other things that relate to the
And yes,
design
and all those
standards.
other findings.
There are design standards, and color is an important part of that, so.
Right,
So
okay,
one-
and I know I keep repeating the same thing, because it's just, I'm wanting to be really clear, because I'm still a little muddy on it now. So it starts here with the concept, it goes to planning, and then it comes back to us for the
Yes.
final on the color. It doesn't go
Because what
back.
we'll do is we
No.
will establish conditions of
So
approval.
I think we have a little bit of, Chelsea, did you have something to say?
Yeah, so just to be clear, the one that came today that was preliminary, they haven't even submitted an application yet.
Right.
So once they submit an application, then it goes to the like committees like you, and then also if it needs to, like the development review committee, which is a staff level committee, to review it, provide recommendations and make your findings, and then it goes to the planning commission for its final decision. So it shouldn't come after the planning commission makes its decision, it should not come back to the DRC. That's why I was trying to say that the one that did that today was unusual, because that one, the planning commission specifically said in the decision that they, as a condition, that it had to come back. So that's kind of a weird situation. But typically, you all, for the permits that I'm talking about for conditional use permits, development plans, and specific plans, you will review it first, and then it will go to the planning commission.
So I think we do probably need to do a little bit more work on this process at staff level before providing final analysis here to DRC and the Planning Commission. The way that the system had been set up, and obviously the DRC is a new committee, so there's still some perhaps improvements to be made and efficiencies to be gained. But the way the process was set up in Solving was that a project comes for preliminary review to the DRC as it did today. It's just a general discussion of layout and colors. At that point, it goes to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission looks at it, and it already has some color scheme to it and whatnot, and it could be either all white or all colorful. And the Planning Commission primarily focuses on the general plan and, you know, the big picture of the project. And then it comes back to the DRC again to approve the final colors. So I think that's where we are getting into a question whether if a Planning Commission looked at the white building but didn't make any particular findings about it other than the general concept of the project and maybe, you know, whether it's Danish or Spanish in style and whatnot, and then it comes to DRC, and DRC is looking at it and wants to change it from white to gray and blue. Is that inconsistent with the Planning Commission?
That's why I was repeating my question again,
Correct.
because I
Yes.
feel like I'm getting two different answers here.
Correct.
And I'm
I am.
not at all clear.
So I don't know, Chelsea, if you have that answer in mind for that type of process, or we can come back with that question.
Yeah, I think we might need to come back to that, because I think part of what's happening is, you know, I can tell you what the code means, but if there's a process that, and what the code says, but if there is a process that the city as a policy matter wants to follow, then we can, you know, certainly work on that. But I think what I described is what is described in the code right now. So if another, you know, we can certainly consider it at a staff level and come back with more recommendations.
Okay,
Yeah, I think we all,
yeah.
we need that, and the applicants need that. And it sounds like there's
Yeah,
some
we'll keep working on
inconsistency.
this issue together, because there's gonna be some work, I think we're getting a lot of work done, but I think there is some work to help clarify or eliminate some of the ambiguities that exist. And understandably, because of some of the changes and so forth and over the last 2 or 3 years. But I appreciate your efforts and
Thank you.
your legal memo on relative responsibilities of DRC and planning and city council for that matter. We ought to make sure everybody, I ask you, because I feel I can't send out copies of that.
I will definitely
I should have asked you to do that. But
we will modify the memo, we'll work on understanding of the procedures and recommend future procedures
okay, that
in
would
the
be great
most
for us to
efficient
discuss next time.
way,
That's
yes.
right.
And then if this back and forth still exists, we'll come back and have some analysis
Okay.
with how to legally address that as well.
Okay,
Yes, thank you.
great, thank you so much, appreciate that. Any comments by committee members of any sort? Any more comments for city staff?
In looking forward to our next meeting, right now, we do not have any applications coming in. Again, you gave great direction to the 2 projects that are in their preliminary stages. We do have 2 other projects that are in their, basically the applicant's side. You saw the Sampson Medical Clinic. They are working through, we're getting regular emails on their design architects' questions. We also have at St. George's project that they're also working through designs, but I'm not expecting to see applications in the next month. Right now, we don't have any applications for signs, so we will know as we get probably another 2 weeks whether we'll even have enough material for a meeting.
Understand, I know, planning did not have a meeting last month.
Correct.
Correct.
Because of that, and that'll happen sometimes, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Ebbs and flows.
Yeah, and we want to make sure that, the topics for the applications are certainly covered when they're ripe and ready to be considered. But we also, and there are some other issues, but I think making sure that those applications are processed in a timely way is most important.
And I think too, if there isn't any business next month, that will give, Chelsea and staff some time to continue this discussion for some clarity on, planning versus DRC roles and responsibilities.
Yeah. So we should have some sense of within the next couple of weeks about whether it's a green light or
Yes,
not.
our deadline for filing something for the next meeting is, I believe it's October 3rd.
Okay. Well,
And so
I'll
we have
look to Xenia to advise us whether you're recommending to have a meeting or not, based on the totality of circumstances you're facing. Is that all right, people?
Yeah, no, yeah, my only comment was I'm aware right now that I will not be available for the November meeting.
Okay.
So I will not be, I cannot move that evening.
That's November 18.
Yeah, I have a conflict that's immovable.
Okay.
And I would, if we ended up being loaded, I really wouldn't want to miss it. So I don't know if we can do anything, but I just wanted to let you know, because I do know that I can't make that date.
Okay.
I would say if there was a decision that it made sense for everyone to be here, I can be available that day, but I will be gone up until the 14th of November for the whole first 2 weeks. So for me, it would have to be later in the month, which kind of.
We can move that, that's
Thanksgiving,
also a
but-
possibility, rather than sticking to the third Thursday. Yep.
I'm utterly impressed that you have your calendars sorted out that far in advance.
All the way to next year.
That duly noted, though. I think that's a good point, and I think we'll see if there's, to some extent, there'll be some flexibility, and when we do that, we
Yeah.
want to make sure that, if we have things to process, we process them with a
Yeah, I just
quorum.
wanted to tell you as soon as I knew that I
Yeah.
couldn't.
Okay, appreciate getting that heads up early.
Okay.
Okay, anything else from the?
And if I may ask,
Please.
what are the calendars like for December? again, that would be close to the holiday week,
That's December 16.
and so,
That's up based on the third Thursday, yeah,
Right.
that's,
The only thing I have is the DRC review.
Yeah, I'm okay then, I'm actually
no
okay
idea.
then.
The Overhoy Christmas party?
Yeah.
No, that's not happening this year.
that's the DRC Christmas party,
Yeah.
okay, just wanted to, I mean, we basically have the next 3 months before the end of the year, so just
Yeah. Okay,
projecting.
anything more to come before us today?
No more comments, thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you.
we're